Good morning. My name is Chris Lamb, and I'm a gastroenterologist from Newcastle. Thank you so much to Crohn's and Colitis UK for the opportunity to come and speak to you all today. Thanks to the organisers, and I want to talk to you about a project called IBD-RESPONSE, which aims to look at how our understanding of the gut microbes which live inside our body can help us make treatment choices in inflammatory bowel disease in both Crohn's and colitis. This project is already funded, but we are in the process of setting the study up. And so we're still able to have flexibility in how we enroll patients and the types of experiences that patients will have within this study. And that's why having your feedback today is of real importance. And what we're trying to understand is how to inform this concept of precision medicine. So precision medicine relates to how to use the right treatment in the right patient at the right time in their disease course, and trying to understand the differences between different people, which may inform why one person responds particularly well to a drug and another person may not respond quite as well. And this comes at a time when we've got more injectable and tablet immune treatments available than ever before, which is really exciting. But of course, we know that we still need more, and we need to know how to use these better, because not everyone will respond to these treatments. We don't know which treatment is best suited for individual patients. Perhaps it's something to do with the different types of IBD. Perhaps there may be some test results which may have an impact. Perhaps there's something about a blood result, or there may be something in a biopsy which may allow us to determine if someone's more or less likely to respond to a treatment. And particularly for our study, we're interested in knowing whether there's something about the stool, about something in poo, which determines whether or not a patient may respond to a drug. And of course, the other question is, when's the right time? And unfortunately, this is really important because we know that not everyone will respond to the treatments that they're prescribed. And we also know that in some people who do respond, they will then lose that response over subsequent months or years. So the microbiome is really interesting and very exciting. The microbiome refers to the microbes which live inside our intestine. And there's lots of them. In fact, there are more microbes which live in our intestine than there actually are human cells in the rest of our body, which is fascinating when you think about it. And when you go to a genetic level, when you look at the genes of these microbes, there are far more microbial genes within our bodies than there are human cells. And the fascinating thing is that these trillions of microbes which live within the intestine are separated from our immune system by one single layer of cells, and that's the epithelium, or the lining of the intestine, which separates our microbes from our immune system. And actually, it's those microbes that educate and inform our immune system how to behave. And that's important for maintaining health, but it's also really important when we think about diseases, and it's the interaction between the immune system and the microbes which shape many diseases within the gut and outside of the gut as well. So what does microbiome mean? Well, micro means small, and biome means a community of organisms living in a particular place. And the gut microbiome refers to lots of microbes. It refers to bacteria, viruses, fungi, and a particular type of microbe called archaea as well. And these microbes have evolved over a huge number of years in order to live together and to adapt to the environments that they live in. And to put this in context, microbes have been around for 3.5 billion years. And that relates to human beings who've only been around for 200,000 years, so a relatively short period of time in comparison to the microbes. Dinosaurs, in fact, were around 65 million years ago. And so these microbes have had literally billions of years in order to evolve and learn how to live within our intestines, but also to populate so many other areas of life and the world. The team who'll be delivering this project, called IBD-RESPONSE, are the team in Newcastle. That includes myself, but also includes colleagues John Mansfield and Ali Spate, who are consultant gastroenterologists, Professor Helen Hancock, who is the director of the clinical trials unit here in Newcastle, and my close colleague, Dr. Chris Stewart, who's a microbiologist and scientist. Up in Edinburgh, we have Charlie Lees, who you may know as being heading up the PREDICT cohort, which is another study looking at the microbiome and environment in IBD. In Cambridge, we have Miles Parks and Tim Rain, who work at Addenbrooke's, and Miles heads up the IBD bioresource, which will be a key part of this project too. Carl Anderson in the middle there is from the Sanger Institute. And in London, we have several institutions which are involved. Ailsa Hart at St Mark's, who you'll know from being one of the organisers of this meeting. We also have Julian Marchese, Nick Powell and Nat Prescott as well. Down in Exeter, we have the team behind the really fantastic PANT study, which some of you may have taken part in. This is Nick Kennedy and Tariq Ahmed. And in Oxford, we have Luke Jostins and Jatsat Sanghi is the team there. So a great team of clinical researchers, of scientists, and people who know how to deal with big data, lots of data behind this. So IBD-RESPONSE will invite patients to take part from 30 hospitals across the UK. And we're really hopeful that we will start inviting patients to take part in this from the early part of 2021. We're looking for a large number of patients to take part. We're looking for 1,300 patients to take part, and we're identifying patients who are starting a new treatment. So starting a biologic therapy. These are the injectable therapies we use in Crohn's and colitis, such as infliximab, adalimumab, ustekinumab, or vedolizumab. And it may be that if new treatments come along during the period of this study, which is 4 years, that we can add in those studies later on. And we'll also be looking for patients who are starting a new tablet therapy, which has been around for the last couple of years, called tofacitinib. We'll be looking for participants in this study to undertake questionnaires at 3 time points. So before they start treatment, 3 months after starting the treatment, and 1 year after starting the treatment. And at the same time as collecting or undertaking those questionnaires, which we would like you to be able to do on a mobile device, a tablet or a laptop, we'd also like you to be able to collect a stool sample at home. And those stool samples can then be popped into a package and they can be sent back to the lab, so you don't have to come to hospital for that. Where you do come to hospital as part of your routine care, we would like to take that opportunity to collect some blood samples. So when you come to clinic or come in for an infusion. And we're also really keen to collect biopsy specimens if you're undergoing an endoscopy as part of routine care during the period of this study. So we're not looking for you to come to hospital any extra times. We're certainly not looking to undertake any endoscopies that aren't planned. So there'll be no research tests from that perspective. But when you do undergo these tests as part of routine care, we'd like to take the opportunity to collect some samples. We're going to get a lot of data from this, and that's really exciting. So we'll have this questionnaire data around quality of life, around fatigue and the impact of IBD on day-to-day living. We'll have some really detailed information about diet, which is clearly very important for the microbiome, for smoking, medications, and things like surgery. And we'll feed all that information into algorithms so we can try and understand and make sense of the huge amount of data that we'll get. And that involves computers, very powerful computers, which will utilize processes which are called machine learning or artificial intelligence alongside our very experienced study team. So we're very excited to get underway with this. So how could this information change treatment in the future? Well, we hope that this will develop a new test which we can undertake at the time when a patient flares, or perhaps even at diagnosis, which will allow us, in partnership with patients, to decide which is the best treatment for them to have and at what time. We hope that we may also be able to identify some of the bugs which are causing problems. So perhaps identify bad bugs which maybe make the inflammation that we see in Crohn's and colitis worse, or perhaps control whether or not a patient responds to treatment. And if we do identify these bad bugs, perhaps we can then identify ways to treat them. And that may include, for example, antibiotics that could be targeted to that particular microbe. We may also identify good bugs. So these are bugs which are associated with a good outcome. And therefore, perhaps we could maximize the effect of these good bugs by providing probiotics, so additional bugs. Or perhaps we could modify fecal transplants in the future to make sure that we have the right bugs there. This study will also collect a lot of samples, and that's a fantastic opportunity for later laboratory research to try and understand more about inflammatory bowel disease, what governs response to treatment, but also perhaps what actually causes flares in the first place. So we're really excited about the future, and we'd really like your feedback to help us shape this project as we start. And we hope to feedback more information over the next 4 years as the study unfolds. Thank you for your time today, and thanks to Crohn's and Colitis UK for having me to speak. Yes, there we go. So we will be collecting questionnaire information from patients before, as I say, they start their treatment, then again at 3 months into treatment and at 1 year. And what I'd really like to understand is what length of questionnaire is acceptable to fill out. At what stage will people who take part in this study start to switch off and say, I've done enough and I'm not going to fill out any more of a questionnaire. So I'd be really grateful if you could fill out what length of questionnaire you think is acceptable. So 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or 25 minutes. I'd be really grateful to know how comfortable people would be with collecting a stool specimen at home and then sending that in. So what we would do is we would provide you with the equipment to do so, so some gloves, a stool pot, a collection device, and we would also supply you with a box, a safe box for this to be sent back in, which would be labelled and would be prepaid. So it would be simply a case of popping it in the post box. I'd like to receive some feedback also as to whether you like the idea of being able to consent to a study remotely from your own home. As I say, we will have members of the team who will call you to explain the study to you. So this is not something which you won't have contact with us about. But I think particularly with the COVID pandemic, but also just with advancing technology, what we want to do is get to a point where studies can be run remotely without you having to come to hospital specifically for research visits. So I'd be really grateful if you could answer question 3 also. We'll give you a few minutes to do that. Following that, I'd be really grateful to take your questions and I'll try and answer as many as I can. And some of the discussion points I hope to try and stimulate discussion around was, how can we make this study as interesting as possible to patients? What sort of things would you like to see on the website? Do you think social media posts are important? What kind of things would you like to see there? Are videos good, pictures, sources of information? How can we help patients to maximize return of home collected stool specimens? So we know from other studies, things like the bowel cancer screening program, or actually asking patients to submit samples like fecal calprotectin, that sometimes we're only able to receive around about half of the samples that we request. So what I'd be really keen to understand more about is how we can maximize return of these really, really precious specimens. One of the other things which I think would be really interesting to find out about is how people feel about the use of samples that are collected. One of the areas of advancing science at the moment is using biopsy specimens in particular to grow new epithelial cells so that we can understand more about how the lining of the gut behaves in response to microbes. And these are things called organoids or mini-guts. I'd be really interested to know what people think about that too. And also if anyone has any specific comments about the information they would like to know during the consent process. So our default will be to provide a several-page document explaining about the study, how it will work, and I'd be really interested to know about the sorts of things you would like to see within that. So I'm happy to stop there, and I will stop sharing my screen at this stage so I can hopefully see the rest of the panel, at least if not more of you, and I will try and answer your questions now.
Okay, so we've got 91 people have answered the poll, so I'm going to close the poll. Just give it a couple more seconds in case someone's just about to press submit. Okay, and we should be able to all see the results here. Fantastic. And Chris, can you see the Q&A section?
I can, and I can see the results of the poll. So just to go through that then. So I asked about what length of questionnaire is acceptable to fill out, and the maximum seems to be around about 15 minutes. So there were 14% of participants that felt that 25 minutes was reasonable, and 19% felt that 20 minutes was reasonable, but the most people went for 15 minutes. So that's really helpful for us to know, so that we need to make sure we ask, the most important questions and make sure that the questionnaire doesn't go on for too long. The second question I asked you was, would you be happy to collect a stool sample at home and send it in? And that's great to know that 97% of patients were happy to collect stool samples. That's really, really good to know. And I think actually knowing that up front and during the consent process, making it really clear that the collection of the stool specimen is the essential part of this study, hopefully will allow people to decide whether or not they would like to take part. And I'm delighted to see that 97% of you again we're very keen on the idea of e-consent. I mean, what I would say is that it doesn't have to be done online. So if patients are coming to clinic or would prefer to speak to the research team face to face, we'll still have that option available. But I just think that it's great to hear that so many people like the idea of online consent. At the end of the day, what we want to do is have the least inconvenience for you, but still gain, you know, this really, really important information. Okay, so we've got some questions on the Q&A, so I'll try and go through a few of those in the last 5 minutes or so before the next speaker. So how often would you need to complete the questionnaire? So there'll be 3 times. So the questionnaire would be completed before you start treatment. So the idea would be that the team at your hospital would identify the fact that you're going to be started on one of these drugs within the next couple of weeks, hopefully. And we would invite you to take part, to fill out a questionnaire before you start the medication. And then we would ask you to fill out a questionnaire again after 3 months. And that's roughly at the end of the loading dose period for many of the medications that we use. So the higher dose time period. So we can see how you've responded to the initial doses. And then we would ask you to fill out questionnaires again at 1 year to see how things are going later on in the treatment period. Okay. So the question from Sarah Williams saying, at the moment, those who have the most severe disease can get funded for biologics. So do you feel this would cause an impediment to the range of data you collect? I think that's a really good question. I think the question, the study is particularly designed to look at how we can use these treatments better. And so I guess by definition, it will therefore recruit patients who have more severe disease because it's those treatments that are being prescribed in that scenario. I think it's a really good point, though. The kind of information that we want to get from this, I hope, will be applicable to more than just biologics. So it may be that we can identify aspects about the gut microbiome, so about the bugs, which will help us to understand more about what causes flare and what causes the resolution of that flare. And that then may be applicable to other treatments, and actually may be completely applicable without any treatment at all. So it may be something that we can think about undertaking at the time of diagnosis, perhaps in the future, and understand more about how disease behaves. But at this stage, we're starting with that group of medications in particular. So the question was, I might have missed this, but will the study only be available to sign up at certain hospitals, or is it across the UK? Again, another great question. We anticipate that we will probably open this study at 30 hospitals across the UK. So they will be spread across the UK, but it may be that your particular hospital isn't part of this. And part of that is because the more hospitals we open up, the greater funding that's required. And the greater the number of people that we need to have to manage data collection at different sites. It may be over time we're able to open up to more than 30 centres, but at this stage we think it'll be 30 sites. Another question is, do I need to be a patient of the NHS trust involved in the study to be able to participate, or can anyone from any NHS trust in the UK participate? Again, I think at this stage we're probably looking at 30 centres, but that's something that we could and should look at. Another question is, I'm already on vedolizumab. Am I suitable for the study? So we're only looking for people who are starting a treatment at this stage, rather than people who are already established on treatment. Now, if patients are on a particular treatment already, but then they stop that treatment and start a new treatment, at that stage you would be eligible to go into the study. But if you're already established and are on a treatment longer term, then unfortunately on this occasion we wouldn't be able to recruit you to the study. Another question about the relationship between the microbiome and the human genome and how complex this is. Yes, a question about how we're going to manage the complexity of that data. So it's going to be very complex to look into this, and we have a great team involved. So the team that I put up on the slide before from around the country, and we have a range of expertise. We have clinical experts, we have clinical research experts. We also have experts in utilising machines for artificial intelligence. So that basically means feeding in lots of information to a computer and allowing the computer to help us as the academics to understand the information that we're generating. And we're intending to build a network of researchers who can help to analyze this information in an anonymized way. So your information will be, of course, protected, but to understand the complexity of this information, we will have to use some powerful machines to do that. And we feel as though we have a great expertise within the team to be able to do that. I'm just going through a couple of the other questions to see whether there's anything I haven't answered. Can you withdraw from the study if you change your mind? Absolutely. So as with any study, you can withdraw at any time without giving any reason for withdrawing. And it's important to realize that if you withdraw from a study, this does not affect your medical treatment. So that's the case with any research study. You're completely in control and you're free to withdraw at any time. And you're also free not to be involved in the study. So if you're invited to be involved in the study and you don't want to do it, that's completely fine. It's also worth being very, very clear with this, that we're looking to capture information about treatments that are being instituted by your NHS clinicians. So we're not prescribing what treatments that the NHS clinicians give you. This is purely observational. So it's collecting information about treatments that you are being prescribed under normal circumstances rather than anything different to what you would normally receive. When will the results be available? So that's a really good question too. I hope that we'll be able to release results as and when they become available throughout the lifetime of the study. But of course, I think some of the major results may be released towards the end of the study. So perhaps in 3 or 4 years' time will be the major findings. Is diet an interest in this research? Yes, that's a really, really good point. Diet is of interest. And so we've been having lots of discussions with some very specialist nutrition and dietetic researchers and clinicians around the country, and we continue to have lots of meetings with them over the next couple of weeks too, to try and refine what we're going to ask about diet, because of course diet is really important to shaping the microbiome. And I hope also that this will give us information about how the diet impacts the treatments that patients have.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. So I'm going to have to go off there. We've got lots of questions here that we can send you to have a little look through later. But we're going to have to move over to Alex Scott now, I think. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Morning, Alex. I think you're on mute there.